Okay, I've got 10 o'clock, so let's go ahead and proceed. We are here in the matter of a complaint by Ms. Christine Jones against Entergy, Mississippi. And so the first thing I'd like to do is go around and have everybody introduce him or herself. I'm Cecil Brown. I'm a Central District Public Service Commissioner, and I am the hearing examiner officer. What am I?
You're the hearing examiner.
Hearing examiner for this matter. Ryan?
Ryan Brown, Senior Advisor to Commissioner Brown.
Frank Farmer, General Counsel to the Public Service Commission.
Christine Jones, Entergy customer.
Alexander Martin, Counsel for Entergy Mississippi.
Tiana Raby, Counsel for Entergy Mississippi.
Back there in the back, if you would, ladies and gentlemen, the audience, please.
Denise Barnes is an Energy customer. Bobby Moore, a friend of Chris and an Energy customer.
Alicia Hall, Counsel for Entergy Mississippi.
Jeremy Vanderloo, Energy Mississippi. Martin McGee, Customer Service.
Randy?
Brandy Myrick, the Director of Electric and Gas for the Public Utility Staff.
Tad Campbell, General Counsel, Public Utility Staff.
Okay, the next order of business would be to swear in the folks who are going to be witnesses. So if you're going to be a witness in this matter, would you please come forward or stand so you can be sworn in. Ms. Jones, you'll need to be sworn in also. Anybody else going to be a witness in this matter? Okay, we'll ask the court reporter to swear you in.
I do.
I do.
Okay, thank you. We are here in the matter of the motion by Entergy Mississippi to dismiss the complaint by Ms. Jones. And the testimony today is not about the subject matter of the complaint. It is about whether or not I should dismiss her complaint. Is that correct, Mr. Farmer? You want to explain that further?
Yes, Commissioner. The purpose of this hearing is on Entergy's motion to dismiss. I understand that there will be some, they've brought their customer service representative, and some of that testimony would overlap, I imagine, with what would happen at a hearing on the matter. But to the extent that it supports the motion to dismiss, that's really the limit of the testimony.
Okay, and so I want to reiterate that. That's why we're here today. We are not here today to get into the subject matter of the complaint, except to the extent that the subject matter of the complaint overlaps with the issue of whether or not we should dismiss this motion. So with that, Mr. Martin, you want to call your witness? You have an opening statement?
Well, I have an opening statement.
Okay, you want to make your opening? Sure.
Yes. We're here today on Energy Mississippi's motion to dismiss the formal complaint brought by Mrs. Jones disputing the charges on our monthly bills. She alleged that Energy Mississippi overcharged her in January of 2019, overcharged her by 3,000 kilowatt hours in that billing cycle. And she, as part of that complaint, she also requested information, meter reading data for several months in 2016, 2017, and 2018. Energy Mississippi moved to have the complaint dismissed, and we believe that all the evidence that the company has presented indicates that Energy Mississippi billed Ms. Jones appropriately in accordance with her usage, and in addition, we satisfied all of her requests for additional information as in regards to the meter reading data. Now, we understand Mrs. Jones' concerns, and we tried to address her concerns regarding her bill by investigating that and providing her with the meter reading data that she requested. If I can, I'd like to discuss with you what brought about the complaint on that January 2019 bill. Is that, may I offer that
Yes.
information? So this arose from the January 2019 billing cycle, where we determined that a meter reader miskeyed his entry into our handheld meter reading device, and that led to an implausible reading in the billing system. Whereas the meter reading should have been approximately 73,000 kilowatt hours, it ended up being 13,000 kilowatt hours, and that was input into our field collections data system. And when it was transferred to our billing system, the billing system determined, that reading was implausible, and they, generated an adjusted bill. They determined, you can't use a negative 56,000 kilowatt hours in a month, so they generated an adjusted bill based on her prior usage, in January of the prior year. Her usage in January of the prior year was, a bit higher. She had taken, we've learned, that Ms. Jones had taken steps to reduce her usage.
Mr. Martin, would you use the microphone,
Oh.
please, as well? Because it's not just for the courtroom, it's also for the purpose of we're required to webcast this hearing, and
Okay.
our viewers at home can't hear.
Okay. So Ms. Jones contacted us about her bill. She had been observing and making records of her usage, and she let us know that the usage that she had been billed for in January 2019 was out of line with the readings that she had taken. And we communicated with Ms. Jones, and we went and we ultimately sent out a meter reader to do a reread. And we rebilled Ms. Jones based on the reread. And we had further conversations with Ms. Jones, and she wanted us to use the actual reading that she had taken in January of 2019. So so we rebilled Ms. Jones the second time using the meter reading that she had taken. In addition, after communicating with Ms. Jones, she requested information regarding her bills from previous months. We provided that, and she also requested information on our rate schedule, fuel adjustments, sample bill calculations, and bill histories from August of 2017 to through January 2019. And Energy Mississippi worked, our customer service department worked to provide that information to Ms. Jones. We also provided Ms. Jones with the meter reading data that she requested. In her complaint, Ms. Jones requested that information from Baker Services. We offered an affidavit from Martin McGee, who testified to our meter reading collection and retention procedures. And it boils down to the fact that Baker Services is a third-party contractor for energy, and they don't retain the customer meter reading data. Their employees go out, read the meters, input it into an Entergy handheld device, and then they download it into a system. And it's that they download the device, they dock it in a station, and that customer meter reading data is uploaded into Entergy's bill collection system database. And so Energy Mississippi maintains that data that's has been provided directly from Baker Services. Ms. Jones specifically asked for, in her complaint, asked for meter reading data from the months of December 2016 through February 2017, and from December 2017 through February of 2018. As part of our response to Ms. Jones that we provided in August of 2019, we provided Ms. Jones with meter reading data from January of 2016 through June of 2019. So we provided a lot more meter reading data than Ms. Jones asked for. And what that meter reading data shows is that over that time period, Ms. Jones used 100,214 kilowatt hours total of energy. And she was billed over that time period from January 2016 to June of 2019 for 100,214 kilowatt hours. So we believe that our investigation shows that Ms. Jones was billed for the energy that she used over that time period. So we reviewed that account and determined that energy usage was correct. We are aware that Ms. Jones filed an informal complaint with the Central District, and we worked with the Central District, our customer service department did, to provide Central District information on Mrs. Jones' billings and usage. And as we understand, the Central District sent Mrs. Jones a letter and determined that the billing history is correct and in line, and there are no overcharges on your account. So we believe that Ms. Jones, that the Central District also determined that Ms. Jones had been billed correctly. Concluding, Energy Mississippi has responded to the allegations in the complaint, and we believe that Energy Mississippi has provided the meter data that was requested. We've satisfied that request, and we've responded to the allegation, provided evidence to show that Ms. Jones was billed, accurately, for January 2019 and for the entire, time period that that we provided data for. We believe that the commission should dismiss this complaint, we understand Mrs. Jones' concerns and we appreciate the customer feedback, but we believe we've, resolved the request and responded to the allegations in the complaint, and we ask that it be dismissed.
All right, do you have a witness?
We do have a witness.
All right, would you call your witness?
I'd like to call, Mr. Martin McGee.
Mr. McGee, you want to come up here? You can go ahead.
Mr. McGee, can you, please state your name and position?
Martin McGee, Customer Service Support Manager for Entergy, Mississippi.
And what are your responsibilities in your current position?
I have a group that deals with customer issues, customer complaints that are escalated up to our group. Also dealing with the Public Service Commission with customer issues that come through the Public Service Commission and resolving customer complaints, different customer issues, as well as other things that that comes our way.
Can you speak into the microphone?
Yeah, move, yeah, see if you can adjust that.
Is that better?
Can you hear him now? If you'll speak up a little bit.
Okay.
And are you familiar with the account of Ms. Christine Jones?
Yes, I am.
And what is your familiarity with that account?
Ms. Jones had a complaint back in January that was dealt with personnel within my group.
Okay, so employees under your direction worked to resolve that claim?
That's correct.
Were you personally involved in the resolution of that claim?
Not initially, no.
Would you move the mic closer to you too, please?
Here.
Take it by the base and just slide it toward. There you go.
Right here.
Okay.
One moment, please. Mr. McGee, in August of 2018, Energy Mississippi provided a response to Ms. Jones that provided meter reading data. Are you familiar with that response?
Yes, I am.
And I want to introduce an exhibit, and I'll hand out copies to everyone.
Thank you.
And are you?
All right, you want this exhibit marked and entered?
Yes.
Okay, we'll ask the court reporter to do that. Okay.
All right, so this exhibit was filed as Exhibit 2 to the submittal Energy Mississippi made on August 8th of 2019, and we would like it marked as Exhibit 1 to this hearing.
Okay.
And Mr. McGee, are you familiar with this spreadsheet?
Yes, I am.
Can you describe to us what this spreadsheet is?
This spreadsheet is back from January of 2016 through June of 2019, provides the meter reading data that was collected by Baker Services. The different columns are the dates on the far left, and then on the far right is the reading that was collected by Baker Services when they read the meter.
So is this an accurate representation of would you say this is an accurate representation of the meter reading data that was provided by Baker?
Yes.
I have another exhibit that I'd like to introduce, which was provided as Exhibit 3 to the submittal that Energy Mississippi made on August 8th of 2019. Mr. McGee, are you familiar with this exhibit?
Yes, I am.
Can you explain to us, what this is?
Using data from this this first spreadsheet, it again shows the meter reading date and the reading on the first two columns, and it shows the difference between the two readings in that third column, and then the last column is what we billed Ms. Jones.
So can you, tell us where the data in the first three columns came from?
That came from the meter reading data that Baker got from reading.
Okay. And can you explain to us where the data in the,
You're gonna have to talk up some, I'm afraid, with not much we can do to improve that. Are you as close as you can get to the
About as
mic?
close, I feel like I'm eating it.
can you explain to us where the, information in the final two columns came from?
Yeah, that was calculated from the spreadsheet by taking basically a formula to subtract one column from, one cell from the next to get the difference. And then
And when you, I'm sorry, and when you state the difference, what is it, the difference?
it's the difference between 1 month and the next month.
Okay,
The meter reading from 1 month to the next month is in each cell in that second to the last column. And then the last column is what was billed on Ms. Jones's account.
okay. Based on this, this summary spreadsheet that we provided, can you explain to us, how Mrs. Jones' billed usage, that final column, compares to her, recorded, the meter readings taken?
Yes, and in each cell, the billed usage was what the usage that was calculated was what was billed, with the exception of 3 cells. That was in July of 16 and January of 18, and then again January of 19.
Okay. Can you explain to us what happened, in the first 2 months that you mentioned, July of 2016 and January of 2018, that Mrs. Jones, observed usage differed from her billed usage?
Yes, and in both of those months, the meter reading was recorded outside of the 35-day allowed window for billing. So we took the difference for those months and then got the kilowatt hour usage per day and billed her based on a 33-day billing cycle.
And there was one additional month where Mrs. Jones, the difference in her usage differed from the usage that she was billed for, and that was January of 2019, which we've discussed. But can you describe again what happened in January of 2019?
Yeah, in January of 2019, there was a keystroke error by the meter reader. He recorded 13,613 kilowatt hours as opposed to what should have probably been keyed as a 73,613 kilowatt hours. So that resulted in an implausible read on our account, and so it was the account was estimated based on her previous year's usage.
So outside of those 3 months over this nearly or 3+ years of meter reading data, were there any other instances where the recorded usage differed from the billed usage?
No.
Okay. I'd like to return to your group's work on resolving the complaint that Ms. Jones filed. What work did your what was the first interaction that your group had with Mrs. Jones?
When the complaint came to our group regarding her usage or her complaint about being overbilled, my group got involved in talking with her about that usage, about that bill.
Okay. And Are you aware that Mrs. Jones filed an informal complaint?
Yes, I am.
And what work did your group do to help resolve that informal complaint?
We worked with the the Central District of the Public Service Commission to provide the billing data and the meter reading data around those months that were in question, and provided information regarding those, and basically showing what we billed and how it was billed.
Do you know if the Central District made a determination regarding that complaint?
Yes,
And what was that determination as you understand it?
that we had properly billed and accurately billed the account.
Okay. And are you aware of the formal complaint that Ms. Jones filed with the Public Service Commission?
Yes.
And what do you understand to be the basis of that complaint?
My understanding is that the complaint was that we had not, that we had overbilled Ms. Jones, and that we had not provided the meter reading data from Baker Services.
Okay. And has Energy Mississippi provided that meter reading data from Baker Services?
Yes, we have.
And has Ms. Jones been billed for her actual kilowatt hours of usage?
Yes.
Has Ms. Jones been billed in accordance with the rates on file with the commission?
Yes.
And one moment, please. No further questions.
Okay, I've got a couple of questions.
Before we do that, Commissioner, I'm not sure if I missed it, but I'm assuming you want to offer that second one as an exhibit.
Did you offer that one?
Yeah, I did intend to offer.
Okay,
This was marked as Exhibit 3 as Exhibit 2 to the hearing.
okay. Let's have that marked. Got a couple of questions. Mr. McGee,
I need to wait till we get
The-
finished, or?
we're gonna get to you. The procedures you used when this was brought to your attention, or when it was brought to Entergy's attention, is that standard operating procedure? Is the way these adjustments were made,
Yes, sir, it
is
is.
that out of the norm
No, it's
in
not out of
any
the
way?
norm. No, sir.
Are there other bills that you're aware of that have been adjusted in the same manner?
Yes, sir.
Okay, tell us about that. How common is this? Do you have any sense of that?
It is, I don't know the exact number, like percentage-wise, but it is fairly common for a meter reading to come in that is not in line with what is expected. And at that time, the meter reading would be estimated based on an implausible read. When and it could be for a number of reasons. It could be higher than usage, higher than normal usage. Weather plays a lot in that. If it's really cold or really hot, and compared to the previous year, it gets a reading out of line. So we may estimate based on that.
If there's an out-of-line reading, how is that identified? Is it kicked out by the system itself? Or are there parameters within which the system will say it's okay or not okay?
Yeah, there are parameters surrounding what the expected read is, or the expected range of a read. So, for example, with this one, it was outside of the expected read, so it kicked out. And as a result of being kicked out as an implausible read,
All right, and who makes the adjustment? When it's kicked out, tell us the process so we understand what happens to get to the point where she has got an adjusted bill.
When it kicks out, it goes to our back office accounting group, and our back office accounting group will look at the bill and determine if it is truly an implausible read, and in this case it was. And then they will look at previous years, and then based on the previous year's usage, they'll estimate the usage.
All right, and this information is uploaded from Baker. Baker does not retain that information, is that correct?
That's correct.
And that's not part of your contract, that they retain that?
Now, our contract with them is for them to read the meter and enter in the meter readings within the handheld device that we provide them, and then upload.
You
that
own
data.
the handheld device, is that correct?
That's right.
That's your device, not theirs.
That's correct.
And tell us who Baker is, not who owns it, but tell us
Yeah.
about Baker.
Baker is a contract meter reading service that we have contracted with to provide, and they provide employees that read meter reading routes.
And under current circumstances, in Ms. Jones' case, these are manually read, and
That's-
they're
that's
on
correct.
site. Somebody looks at the
Yes,
meter and
somebody
reads
has,
it.
that's correct. Somebody has to come to the meter and read the meter.
Now, has somebody been out and looked at the meter at Ms. Jones' residence?
Yes, sir.
Okay, tell us about that, what you've done about that.
You're talking about,
Tell us how that happened and what the circumstances were and what the results were.
okay, during the course of that meter reading route, the meter reader came out to read Mrs. Jones' meter. He read the meter, and then when he punched the reading into the handheld device, he had a keystroke error. He entered in a 1 instead of a 7 on the meter reading device.
Okay, subsequent to that, when Ms. Jones complained or asked about the reading, did anybody go out and check the meter? Has anybody been out to look at the meter,
Yes, sir, it was reread.
reread?
We sent, a part of the initial complaint, we issued a reread for the meter and had an employee go out and read the meter and turn in that reading.
Has the meter been tested in any way?
I'm not sure if the meter has been tested. I don't think I can't remember.
So far as you know, she's not made a request to test the meter.
As far as I know, she's not.
Okay. But there are other customers that have similar billing issues as a result of an error in meter readings, is that correct?
That's correct.
And they're typically, it goes to the accounting department and they look at it and make a determination whether they believe there might be an error or not, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, and then who makes the final determination about the adjustment?
That would be within the accounting, the back
Accounting
office
department,
accounting
they do
department.
that. Okay, I don't have any other questions, Mr. Farmer.
I don't have any questions at this time, but it would be appropriate if Ms. Jones has an opening statement
Yeah.
for her to deliver that, and then Mr. McGee will remain subject to cross-examination.
Sure, okay. Ms. Jones, you want to do you have an opening statement?
Now, would you guys like a copy of the things that I have, so that when I talk, you can refer to them?
Depends on what you have. We have your complaint and that information that you've submitted to the commission, we have that, so,
Well, I can give you these, and I can refer you to the pages,
okay,
and it'll probably be easier and faster for me to get through.
okay, sure. Thank you.
And I have a copy too. I'm sorry. Okay, first of all, I want to start with their first exhibit.
All right, you're going to have the same mic issues
Oh,
that we've had.
can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can the
I have-
audience hear you
I have a
okay?
heavy voice, so. Actually, I brought this, and as you can see, I have the exact same exhibit here.
Okay,
All of the orange markings represent adjustments to my bill, and they are not guaranteed to be Becker's readings. The other thing is, this page shows one area where they're saying that they read the meter and, oh, by the way, let me start over. Becker Company does not manually read my meter. Most of the time, the guy comes here in a little white truck, he points to the meter, and the meter reading machine, which is something about this long and about this wide. He points to it, and the thing will usually just, I guess, log the meter reading from his truck. The distance between the actual box and my driveway is probably where Mr. Farmer is sitting to you. And whenever there's a problem with them reading it, he gets out of the truck and he walks up to the meter to verify what's on it. And I've gotten this from 2 representatives of the Becker Company. The other thing is, and like I said, this particular form, basically my response to this form is, this is not Becker Company's reading on most of this. This is Energy's figures after they have adjusted and altered the figures. On here I have, these are not Becker Company's because January 4th, 2018 and January 8th, 2018 figures are guaranteed to be invalid, which invalidates the entire report. God only knows what else has been estimated and or altered. This is an insult to me and to Energy as a company. The second page, which is the same document he just gave you as an exhibit, also shows adjustments and figures that are being altered. And they are definitely not the figures from the Becker Company's meter reading machine. Mr. McGee?
McGee.
Mr. McGee stated at the beginning of this hearing that they have provided all that I've asked for. I do have, as you see, a ton of paper, and not a one is what I asked for. What I have asked for from day one, when I talked to Executive Customer Service, which took me 3 days to find them, by the way. Nobody at the regular Entergy Customer Service, they all have scripted responses to everything you ask. Their scripted responses starts off with, oh, no, there are no adjustments. Nobody estimated the bill. Then they go as far as to offer me payment plans to pay off the inflated dollar amount that they bill me for, which is an insult to me. Maybe someone who has mental problems may appreciate that, but to me, it's like a dagger in the heart for them to offer me a payment plan for something that they have inflated. I have this year, I've been dealing with this, and actually I thought it was 2 or 3 years. I remember that when I started realizing I had a problem with Energy, I actually called Energy Customer Service, the regular 800 number, and I asked them to go over my account with me. And when I went over the account with them, I found that they were overcharging me and then proceeded to overcharge me throughout the year to the point that they had a savings account for me, an account that I had no idea was there. I actually had them to use up my credit that they said it was in my account. I told them my statement comes every month. There has been not one notice of an adjustment on my bill on any statements, and I have samples of statements here where they billed me on the inflated statements just like they did the regular statements. They have something on this form, a code 25, which basically says that they've done something, they've adjusted something. Not one time have I heard from Energy other than when I call them, and usually when I call them, they assure me that there was not a problem with my reading, and those were the figures from the Becker Company. I then, in October, and I have copies of all of this, I started in October of 2018 to actually log my meter readings. And when I got my bill out of my mailbox in January, I got the bill out of my P.O. box on January the 24th, showing that I owed, I think it was almost $600. I had all of my proof in hand at that point because I had been logging the meter every single week, sometimes twice a week. And when I looked at it, the figure that they had supposedly read on January the 7th, 2019, 21 days later, the meter still had not reached that number. When I talked to regular customer service, I talked to 4 or 5 people there, kept getting transferred. I finally talked to 2 supervisors on the end. None of them seemed to know anything about an executive office. So what I had to do is locate the executive office through locating the CEO of Energy Corporation. I finally got to a department and found that they actually have an executive customer service. Now, why I wasn't given this up front, I have no idea, but I guess it's for someone special that didn't include me. Anyway, to make a long story short, this form reflects figures that have been altered and is noted here. In January of 2018, which is the months that I'm asking for the reading, because at this point, I can't trust anything they say. They have assured me since before 2014, when I got rid of my equalized billing, that, oh, their figures are always perfect, they're always right. I get the report, and these are reports, copies that they sent to me, in an effort not to give me the Becker Company's meter reading. But I have gone through these, spent hours getting them and discipling them. And I find that on January the 18th, just like I told them, they did the exact same thing in January 18 and in the first of 17 that they did in 19. They, if you look at the report on January the 8th, they show a meter reading. And on February the 6th, they show a meter reading. I don't know if these are the real readings or not, because what they did on the January bill, they subtracted 916 kilowatt hours from the bill because they had gone over the 35-day, and I also have a copy of that in the packet, where there is a practice and rule for PSC that they cannot bill me less than 25 days and not over 35 days. The bill for January 2018 was over 35 days. So what they did is they went back and they adjusted it by subtracting 916 kilowatt hours from that month's bill. But then in February, they went back and they added 916 hours. And there is no way that, and when they adjusted 916 hours, there is no way in God's kingdom that you can determine that I used 916 kilowatt hours from January the 4th to January the 8th. That's a period of 4 days. There's no way they can estimate that, because I live in the house and I can't estimate what I use based on my logging. I don't know what I'm using, and they wouldn't know either, which means that they estimated it. And then, to add insult to injury, when they did the February's bill, they read the meter, they show a figure, and then they subtracted 916 from January, and then turned right back around and added 916 to the next month's figure. And I've always wondered, because I think on one of their documents, they said, well, if they miss something the first month, the next month it would correct itself. And I find that that's not so. At least I can't prove it. And at this point, all of these figures and all of these documents they have given me is not Becker Company's reading, which is the most important part of my utility bill if I need to certify something. I know that everyone here has certified that they're correct. Even PSC has certified their figures are correct. And that's why I'm here today to ask, what records did you guys use? Whether it was Mr. McGee or Mr. Martin or even you, Mr. Brown. What figures did you guys use to certify it? Because everything we got here is from Energy. It's from their computer. And this is why I'm asking for the Becker Company's meter reading figures, because that is the only figure that we can guarantee are correct or incorrect. And as you can see on here for January 19, I have a list of my readings on a weekly basis, sometimes twice a week. When I got this bill out of my post office box 21 days after they supposedly read a figure that was 3,123 kilowatt hours more than was used. And when I got the bill 21 days after the figure that they have on this form, they actually, we actually still did not get to this figure. We then had a manager, because while this was going on, I was in the process of talking to the lady at Executive Customer Service about correcting my January bill. I actually gave her copies of my log. I've given her this. I've even taken a picture of my meter. I also had 2 people to witness the meter reading, so they won't think that I've, doctored the picture. Anyway, to make a long story short, this is the letter that I got in the mail saying that they reread the meter. And as you can see on here, the meter still had not reached the figure they read 21 days prior, or over 21 days at the point that he came out. Anyway, these are my things, and like I said, these figures are nothing but trash. Because if one figure is altered, then I have no idea what else is altered. I'm not asking for the entire year, which is what they keep trying to give me, but they keep trying to give me trash. I'm not in the business of trash. When I get my utility bill, if I use it, I have no problem paying it. But if I don't use it, then I do have a problem paying it. And it's not about making payment plans. It's about being ethical in business, and it's about doing what's right.
Okay.
And to ask that they dismiss my case with prejudice, in other words, I can't bring it up again with anyone? Only God knows that that is not going to fly with me.
Okay, thank you.
And this is also, they keep saying they don't have meter reading figures for Becker Company. This is a copy of the State of Mississippi local government records for retention for meter readers. And it's on page 10 of the copies that I gave you guys. And on here, it says the meter reading figures are to be retained for 3 years. It did not say Entergy should retain their record for 3 years. It says meter reading. It actually have different categories. It says utility bill records. Now, these could be considered utility bill records because this is what they've done once it hits the energy. But you cannot disguise meter reading figures as what Entergy has adjusted. Because on here, if you look at this form, they have a figure on here for, where is it, 13,000 on January the 8th, 2019. And this was the period we were correcting my bill. But if you look at this, and this is supposedly their permanent file. This, on January, when I have 100% proof and 100% picture proof of what the meter was reading, their figure is totally different. And in my world, if you got one figure on an ongoing report that is invalid, altered, or adjusted, then it invalidates the entire report because nobody knows what else you've adjusted or estimated. And every single time I call them, even in January, if you talk to anyone, I can't remember the lady's name, but I can get it for you, at Executive Customer Service. When I talked to her, I was furious because I told her I had talked to at least 3 to 4 people, 2 being a supervisor. And all of them spent their entire time, I sit on the phone for 2 hours with them telling me, oh no, they don't estimate bills, they only give you readings. This indicates different. Because this, the 13,000 reading they're showing on here, that's the reading that they adjusted. But then some kind of way they got 13,000 on this report, which he's bringing me the same thing they brought me months ago. And that's why I was wondering if they had corrected the problem, and they didn't. Oh, I'm sorry. But there's like 3 or 4 different things on here that just don't jive. And
Okay,
then, like I
Ms.
said,
Jones,
the
I've got a-
Code 25 shows that they did it in-house, but nothing ever came to me.
I've got a couple of questions for you, if I
Okay.
can. I want to clarify, what kind of relief exactly are you asking for? What is your,
To be honest, before I ask for a relief, I want to know how much and how often they have been overcharging me. Because right now, I feel that the pain and the suffering for having to go through this, and like I said, I didn't start this process in January. I actually started filing complaints with Entergy. Like I said, I canceled, and I can't remember because my brain don't go way back. I called Entergy at least a year to 2 years because I would not have gotten rid of my equalized billing at the first sight of thinking that I was being overcharged. I actually called Entergy, and they were the one that told me, oh no, it wasn't 3 years ago. It was actually in 2014. That's 5 years ago. In the meantime, I have, in an effort to try to bring my bill down, because I never disregarded the fact that maybe I am using that much.
Let me explain to you. We're not a court of law.
Okay?
We have no authority to offer any kind of relief. Mr. Farmer, you want to expound on that, exactly what our,
I'll be happy to, Commissioner. As Commissioner Brown has noted, there's no pain and suffering that is allowable or jurisdictional for the Public Service Commission. It just doesn't have any authority to award that sort of damage. The only relief that could be offered is a specific amount of rate relief that you have alleged you have been overbilled. So what the commission would need to consider in order to consider that is proof of how you were overbilled and in what amount. Because the only relief that this commission can offer is ordering refunds if refunds are actually supported in the record. So that's it. To that extent, I think what Commissioner Brown is asking for is there a number that is supported of an allegation of overbilling that you're requesting this commission order as a refund?
Well, when I consider that, I've put over $2,000 worth of window coverings in my house because of the overcharging in an effort to fix whatever the problem is. I've spent countless dollars buying things to reduce the cost of energy,
Again,
only to have January and February. And let me just say this for the record. What I think energy is doing, because I've been in business for many, many years, and what they're doing is I noticed that this problem occurs in the wintertime between December and February. And I think what they're doing is they're setting themselves up for the rest of the year financially. And I don't think I'm the only person that is enduring this problem. I think it's a whole bunch of folks. And I would hope that PSC would send a message that, being the overseeing agency for this company, is that this behavior should not be tolerated. And I was really offended when I sent copies of my statement, copies of my picture, a copy of the manager's meter reading, and then I get a letter that says the information is correct.
I understand your concern, and I'm sorry that you have gone through this. But we're limited in what the commission can do.
Okay.
We're not a court of law. This is not a lawsuit. This matter, the only jurisdiction we have is if you can prove to us, and I don't mean that in a bad way, that's just the law, how much money you think you've been overcharged. If you can show that that's the case, then we could order a refund or some other relief. We don't have any ability to give damages or that. We just legally can't do that. We're constrained. We're an administrative body. We're not a judicial body.
That's correct.
Actually, in order for me to put an amount on it based on what they have done, this is why I've been asking for the readings. I have not been asking for damages. But if I have to consider the fact that they have overcharged me for a period of over 5 to 7 years, if I put an amount on it, I would probably say somewhere between $5,000 and $10,000.
Okay, but you've got to show us proof of that. You've got to demonstrate. Please listen to me, because this is the only jurisdiction we have. You've got to show in some form that this is the amount that you have calculated or somebody has calculated that you've been overcharged, and here's the proof of how that, and when I say proof, this isn't a criminal deal. We're not asking you to show exactly what happened, but you've got to show that they were wrong and you were right somehow. Is that, Mr. Farmer, is that not correct?
That's correct.
So let me ask you this. So what you're telling me, that when a company I'm trying to think of a word other than defrauds a customer, but let me think of a word. Because this is not a court of law, but I always assumed PSC was here to ensure that people are working within the law. And I noticed that there are plenty of laws and rules and practices on the books for everything. But when a company is not abiding by those rules and practices, then it's okay.
No,
Is that
no,
what you're
ma'am.
saying?
No, ma'am, that is not correct.
Okay.
Here's the problem we've got. Forgetting that Entergy is a big company for a minute, they're saying they're right. They're saying that the meter readings are correct, that there were errors, and they adjusted the error under their normal policy, and that there are no overall errors. They've checked it over a long period of time. They're saying that that is their normal process pursuant to what's called their tariff, which is the rules they operate that you're talking about, that they operate under, that they are correct. You're saying you believe they are incorrect. That's why we're here, to determine whether or not you can show, and you don't have to show it today. I'm not asking you for a number today. This is about whether or not your complaint should be dismissed. That's why we're here. But in the matter of proving, you've got to show us in some way that they are wrong, in what they've done, and here's the amount of money. It doesn't have to be exact. Here's the amount of money I think I've been overcharged based on my own calculations or the calculations of somebody who's helped me put this together. We can't just say, okay, they're wrong, you're right. I mean, they're saying they're right, you're saying you're right. That's where we are. We have no proof they're wrong. We have your allegations that they're wrong.
I have no allegations. I have documented proof that they're wrong. This is documented proof.
And tell us again what your documented proof is.
My documented proof is my statement where they say they read my meter on January 7th, 2019. This is my list of my own meter reading figures,
All right, point me
which
to that.
show that
Point me to that.
they did not read it. I also took a picture of the meter to show what it says on the day that I got my
All
statement.
right, show me
which
where
was
you
21
read,
days
show us
after.
where you read the meter, and you say your meter readings are different than their meter readings.
Okay, look at page 15. The statement is on page 13.
See the statement,
Okay,
all
this
right,
is
point
my
us,
statement
point us,
that I got out of the mail.
point us on
Page
13,
13 is the monthly statement,
all right?
and page 15 is a copy of my sheet that I read the meter. The picture on the top of page 15 is a photo of the meter on January the 24th, which is 21 days after they read the meter. Now, they have given me nothing other than printouts from their files, which I
Right,
have
point
found
us,
three
this-
errors.
There are a lot of numbers on this page, so point us to what you want us to see on these bills and where the calculations are. I'm having a hard time following you on this. I'm not saying you're wrong. Show us on here what you're talking about, where you think they're in error.
Can I approach it?
Sure.
Okay. Or you want me to bring this?
Whatever,
show you on this, 'cause
whatever
that was
would be
highlighted.
helpful to us. And Mr. Farmer, you want to step up here too? Turn that mic around where she can.
From January 2018. This is one from 2019. This is a copy of my log of the meter reading, starting October. Because it always, like I said, they always do adjustments the first of the year.
65, all right, 65.
And then there's a second page for 15 that show the meter reading.
For the record, these two documents are attached to the complaint that she filed dated April 17, 2019. The first document she's describing is an energy bill that is mail date on is January 16th, 2019. It is a 2-page document.
And in the middle here, it gives you the meter reading here. You can look at the
Com-
highlighted areas.
The second document she's referring to is also attached to her complaint, and it is, appears to be notepaper from Nick Clark Printing and Signs. It has
No,
hand-
it's not, it's just this is just a paper in my drawer that I pull out and put in the cabinet to
Yeah.
write on.
Yes, ma'am.
So it has nothing to do with them.
It's
Oh, okay.
from Nick Clark Printing and Signs, and it has her handwritten notes on it. Just so the record's clear as to what documents you're referring to.
Commissioner Brown,
And the picture
Mr. Farmer, if I may,
of the meter.
if we're looking at that January bill, if I could just call the commission's attention to the fact that Entergy indicates on that bill that that is an estimated reading. And so before the commission goes through the calculations that Ms. Jones is showing you, I just wanted to make sure that we make that notation that that bill that she's looking at does indicate from Entergy that it's an estimated reading.
There
And
is
therefore-
nothing on my bill that
Where does it
indicates
indicate
estimated
that?
reading, anywhere.
It says reading and estimated in bold in the middle of the page.
Yeah. Right below where the billing amount is on the right-hand side.
And
is
that
the
was done
statement.
in result of some of the details that we've given the commission before. And so if we want to do the calculations with respect to the actual readings, we might want to look at the readings themselves and not the bills. I just don't want to have the commission spend undue time on doing this and want to make sure we're looking at the proper numbers for the calculations.
Matter, Commissioner Brown, there is not a copy of the photograph that she's referring to in the record as it stands now. Still need to offer that.
There's not a copy of what in?
Your
This-
photograph.
I have given you guys at least 6 of
It's
them.
not-
It was not, you didn't
Oh,
file
okay.
it with the document.
Actually, I did in March 18th when I first came
But
here.
that's not today. Okay,
Okay, now, tell me about January 18th. Where's the note on here that this is a estimated bill?
right below all the numbers on the right-hand side.
Should be right there.
And I need to find my original, because I don't remember anything on there.
Original bill, I think this is a rebill.
Hold on a second, let me see if I can find the original, that's a copy.
Okay, let me ask you this, Ms. Jones. Other than this bill, are you saying that you believe all the billing is incorrect for this period, some period of time? Or you just
I'm
don't
sorry.
know? All right, other than, we're looking at a particular example where we know the bill was adjusted. They've said that, and they say on the bill that it's estimated. Are you saying that your monthly billing for each one of these months is incorrect, that you've been overbilled consistently? Is that what you're saying?
I've been overbilled, like I said, as far as I know, the overbilling occurs between the month of December and February.
Okay.
What they do is they pick the coldest months.
And you were overbilled on usage for those months? Do you have readings for those months?
Yes,
Meter readings?
that's the one I gave you the photocopy of, October.
That's for 1 month.
January.
Have you read, do you have
No,
other,
that's from October through January 30th.
that one meter reading?
Pardon me?
The one you gave us a photograph is for 3 months?
The one that I gave you the photograph on is the one that I started on October the 2018, and it went through January 30th.
Okay,
And that's the one that shows the actual readings.
okay.
Now, they read the meter, they say on January the 7th. I had no log for January 7th. I actually read the meter, though, the very next day.
Okay, after they made the adjustment, are you saying that you were still being overbilled? They made an adjustment.
That, the adjustment that they made was only for January 2019.
All right,
The
but
bill that was
when they
due for
take
January.
they say, when they take, if I understand it, Mr. Martin, when they say, or Mr. McGee, that when they take the cumulative amount, if I understood your testimony correctly, when they take the cumulative amount, starting at some period, and they go through 13 or 14 or 15 months, and add all those readings up, what those readings were, in total, you were billed the correct amount. Have you tried to do that? Are you aware of
No,
that?
and I'm not even interested in that, simply because in order for me to do that, I'm using their figure.
Okay,
And that's the problem.
all right, are
That
you?
is the entire
All
problem.
right, well, let's go back and look at
They're
the.
not
All right, I
billing
wanna
me based on
understand,
what's
though.
collected at my house.
Let's go back and look at the individual monthly readings, which for most months, are somewhere in the 1,500 to 3,000. Occasionally in the winter months are rising up substantially above that. Are you saying that those individual meter readings, where they look at that amount, are those wrong? Are you saying that your meter's wrong, or the readings are wrong, or that they're adjusting? Are you saying that the meter readings are wrong? Are you saying that they are adjusting the meter readings somehow?
They're adjusting the meter readings.
Okay, so you don't think those are actual?
I've never seen one single meter reading from Becker Company. According to them, in one of the letters here, they said they erased them after 3 days. I'm trying to figure out how the state of Mississippi determines 3 years, but they determine 3 days.
Well, here's the deal. The readings are actually being made on equipment owned by Entergy. Baker is just the contractor reading for Entergy. Entergy owns the devices where the readings are being made. Baker does not retain that information. They are a contractor. Is that correct, Entergy? Is that the way it works?
That's correct.
So all of the meter readings are being made by Entergy using a contractor to make the readings. Baker does not make the readings. Baker's using their equipment to make the readings. It's owned by Entergy. So the readings you're getting are Entergy readings. Now,
But they have a report. I'm told that when Baker transmits the figures to them, they put a machine on a computer,
right,
and the computer automatically prints the information.
but those are coming from
that machine, which includes all of my neighbors.
right. I'm trying to explain to you why Baker doesn't keep it, because it's not Baker information.
Mr. Brown, I don't expect Baker to keep it. I expect Energy to keep it. They are the people that I'm doing business with. I don't
Entergy
do
does
business
keep
with
it
Baker-
once
with
they
Baker
upload it.
Company.
Commissioner Brown,
Yes.
can I make one observation is this initial spreadsheet, our Exhibit 1, the far right column are the readings that Baker entered into that device and uploaded to us. So that is the actual readings. And in particular, if you look down to the month in question, where the bill was adjusted, and it shows 13,613 for the meter reading. In the same time period, that's where we said that it should have been entered in at 73,613.
I want to follow up on a point she made.
But if you look at one of her readings at the same time period, there's about a difference of 6 kilowatt hours.
All right, go back and say that again.
If you look at the reading, it shows 13,000.
Ms. Jones, are you following this? You need to hear this, please, ma'am. If you,
I've already looked at that, and I'm well aware of what it says.
Yeah, the far right
But
column.
the point is, it's on the same report with all the rest of the figures. And if they made a mistake by logging that figure, which we have copies of and a picture of it,
all right.
then
Mr.
how do I know what other figures they've
Go ahead.
altered?
All right, Mr. McGee, go ahead and make your point, then I've got a question for
My
you.
point was that we had a keystroke error entering in that meter reading, and it was entered in at 13,613. If it was keyed in correctly, it would have been 73,613. And if you look at the data that she took, the reading that she got on 1/8/19 at 10:45 a.m., her reading is 73,619, which is 6 kilowatt hours difference.
Okay. Let me ask you a question about that. And Ms. Jones has said that based on her observation, the meter reader is not manually reading the meter, that he is pointing his device at the meter and entering, that's the way the data is being entered. Is that correct?
No, sir, he is reading the he is reading the meter. The meter readers have, in some cases where there are remote routes and they can get close in their truck, some of them will have a scope or a seeing device so that they can not have to get out of the car, get out of the vehicle and go up to the meter. If they can't read it clearly, then they will get out of the vehicle and go up closer to the meter to read it. But many of our meter readers, or the contract meter readers with Baker, will have a basically it's almost like a binocular or an ocular that gives them a close-up view of the meter so that they can read the meter.
Okay, so you think he may be looking at, through the scope, reading the meter, is that correct?
That's what I believe he was doing.
You don't know that for a fact, though?
I do not know that for a fact.
All right,
but I
when you say keystroke error, it wouldn't be a keystroke error if the meter was wrong and the meter was being read electronically. There's no keystroke if it's being read electronically.
Correct, that's correct.
But we don't know in her case whether it's being read electronically or manually. Do you
It
know?
is being read manually.
It is being read
Yes,
manually.
At this time, that area has not been converted to our automated meter reading.
Okay, so when whatever she sees them doing, they are not reading electronically. They are having to, if they're not getting out of the truck, they're not doing what they're supposed to do. Is that correct?
If they're not getting out of the truck, they're more than likely using that binocular to read the meter and then enter that reading into the meter reading device.
Ms. Jones, did you hear that?
I heard that, but
Okay.
it makes no sense to me. We're
Okay.
in 2019, and nobody deals with figures manually.
Okay.
Now, if you want to go with me right now to their place and they show me something where they do it manually, then I'll be a believer. But until then, I know better, and I think everyone here knows better.
All right, do you have anything
No company
further,
does
do you have
manual
anything
figures.
further at this point that you'd like to say in your this has all been part of your opening statement. Do you have anything further in your opening statement?
I have actually questions.
All right, that's not part of the statement, so we'll get to that in a minute. Mr. Farmer, what's
Well,
the next?
my final statement is, the situation here, I think, has gotten out of hand. Anytime you bring something to a company's attention, and 6 to 7 years later, it is still going on, somebody got to oversee the company. And at this point, I have all the proof that I need to show that they are overcharging, they are estimating, and they are doing it basically, like I said, between December and February, when it's real cold. So they assume people can't figure it out. When I first got here, that was the first thing everybody said, go equalize billing. And then I found that was the biggest ripoff in America. And at this point, I think someone needs to look into the business practices of this company. It's as simple as that.
Okay. Mr. Farmer, what's the next order of business?
If she has specific cross-examination questions for Mr. McGee, now would be an appropriate time to do that.
All right, Ms. Jones, do you have any questions for Mr. McGee?
Yes, I do.
And before she gets started, following that, because Ms. Jones is herself the complainant, when she is finished with her cross-examination of Mr. McGee, it would be appropriate for Entergy, should they wish, to cross-examine Ms. Jones.
Okay. Ms. Jones?
I would like to ask Mr. McGee.
You need to speak in the mic.
Do you have a copy of my letter dated April 17th, 2019?
Yes, I do.
Yes, you do?
Yes, I do.
Okay. on this letter, one second, I'm trying to find the last page. Okay, in this letter, I made a request for documents. And as I have said previously, I asked for copies of my meter reading figures from December 5th through January 7th, 2019. And I've also well, hold on one second, that's the wrong one. I've asked for copies of my meter reading figures from December 2016 through February 2017, and then December 2017 through 2018. So what you're telling me is that based on the retention law for the state of Mississippi, you don't retain meter reading figures. You only retain billing figures.
No, ma'am, we do retain the meter readings, and that's on this spreadsheet that was our Exhibit 1 on the far right column. Those are the meter readings that Baker,
Those are not
provided.
meter reading figures. Those are actually utility bill. On here, we have, it says OSC 0902. It says meter reading records. The next category is GSC 0903, utility billing records. Now, reading records and billing records are totally different, and that's why they have separate listings on the retention list. And then they have utility billing support records, which basically should be in file for any adjustments made. There should be support records.
Okay.
Then they have utility payment records. What I have here is
Ms. Jones, hold on one
utility
second. Mr. Martin?
billing records.
Mr. Martin,
Can Energy Mississippi get a copy of the document?
do you have a copy of the document that,
Sure you can. Let me get one of these copies back.
I'm not sure which document you're talking about. It's not the,
Commissioner,
yeah, right here.
Commissioner Brown, once again, I think Mr. Farmer indicated that we probably want to make sure that we focus on the issues related to her claim. And I'd just like to point out that I think now that we've had an opportunity to review the document that Ms. Jones is referring to, that appears to be not what is applicable for public utilities, but rather what is required by state and municipalities and other government entities to maintain its own records for its records retention policies. That's not,
I don't have the document.
This document says State of Mississippi, local government records, records retention schedule. It
Okay, but
says
that's for local governments. That's for local governments.
So is that an
And
objection?
then it says, county utility billing records.
Is that an objection?
I would like to object to the entry of this information. I don't think it's really relevant to the issues that we're dealing with today. This is not applicable to the public utilities
I'm gonna sustain
arena.
that.
Note that anything that is collected from my meter on my property is relevant.
This is not a schedule that applies to Entergy. This is a local government schedule. They're not a government entity. This doesn't apply to them. That's not something that applies to them, so I'm gonna sustain the objection.
Where is the copy of their retention schedule for?
They use,
If you're not under local government.
So, Ms. Jones, I think we can kind of get around this by looking at the first exhibit that Entergy admitted into the record here. And that is the specific information that you, number one, requested, and that also shows that we have retained the reading information for the past 3 years, at least as it relates to your initial request.
Okay, I wish you wouldn't keep referring to this information that I requested, because None of this is the information I requested. This is what
Ms.
Entergy
Jones,
decided to send to me.
okay.
What I requested was the meter reading figures from Becker Company, and if you look
And
at.
Ms. Jones, their response is on this document that those are the Baker readings. Is that correct?
That's correct.
That's correct.
Those are the readings that Baker took, but they are not Baker readings. Baker doesn't own that. They are the ones that Baker took using Entergy equipment. The readings come from Entergy, not from Baker. Baker doesn't keep those because they don't have any reason to keep those. They are working for Entergy. The devices that are making, where they enter the information belong to Entergy. Baker doesn't go keep that information.
And Entergy has a responsibility to retain the actual readings and not, as they say, type it into another computer and alter it or adjust it to whatever they want.
Are you telling us this is the only information you have with regard to
So-
it?
Yes, yes, Commissioner, but I think Mr. Martin does have some things that I think Mr. McGee can testify to that may address some of Ms. Jones' misunderstanding about what this exhibit
All right,
actually
let's hear
consists
that.
of.
Let's hear that.
Mr. McGee, if we look back at Exhibit 1, which is marked as Exhibit 2, can you tell us where this data came from?
Pardon me?
Mr. McGee, can you tell us where this data came from?
Yes, this came from our system that holds all of the meter reading data that Baker uploads into Entergy's computer systems.
And can Energy Mississippi manipulate that meter reading data in any way?
No, once we get it, it's uploaded, and then we utilize those readings for billing.
Okay. And who maintains this data?
Entergy does.
Does
through our-
Baker? Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Entergy does through our business warehouse computer system.
Does Baker retain any of this data?
They do not.
Okay, and as you said, this data is stored in an Entergy computer system.
That's correct.
Can I ask Mr. McGee a question?
Yes.
Yes.
Mr. McGee, on the line where it shows 13,613 kilowatt hours, are you telling us that this was captured by the meter reading machine?
I'm telling you that the meter reader keyed in that number, that kilowatt hour number, into his device, and that was what was uploaded into our system. That was not what you were billed because it was an implausible read, and it was not accurate for what you had been, what was expected for you to be billed. That's why that bill was estimated. It was because the reading is an implausible read. So these numbers on the right side are actual readings. And in the 3 months that are highlighted, we billed differently than what the actual read was because it was outside the 35-day window, or in this case, it was a keystroke error that we would not bill that amount.
Mr. McGee, does the
How
fact,
did you get the figure 76,742 when you billed me on January the 7th? If the meter reader read 13,000 and it was miskeyed, where did you get the figure that you billed me for, which was 76,742?
That was based on the previous year, the previous January's bill, and the usage during that time period. And we
Bill was
estimate.
inflated too. So,
No, that-
and I filed complaint with Entergy for 3 years in a row. So how could you go back and adjust the bill based on a bill that I complained about? Do you get, when I call in to complain about my bill, do you keep a record on your computer that I've called and what the conversation was?
We keep notes from previous calls.
Okay, then
In
why
this-
would you use a bill from the previous year? That particular year, I also talked to several employees at your 800 number and a supervisor.
Yes, ma'am.
But you use that figure another year when I advised that there was a problem the prior year.
The prior year, we had an actual reading, which is reflected on there. So we didn't have a miskeyed, we had an actual read. So the previous year, we had actual data that we could base the estimated bill on. Now, the previous year, because the reason it was more than likely estimated high was because the previous year was an extremely cold winter. And we had a lot of customers that, because of the very cold weather that year, that winter, we had a lot of high bills. And your reading that year also was high. And that's why it was estimated higher than was actually used. As I understand from what you've testified, you've made efforts within your house to lower your usage. And we also have charts in here which shows that you have made substantial progress in lowering your usage on
And
your.
they were way before 2018.
But it is showing that you are making progress in limiting your usage.
And after I made the adjustments, my bill continued to be overrated between December and February.
And Mr. Commissioner, unless you can offer proof of that,
Yeah,
it's,
that's what I agree with. Ms. Jones, we've got to go back to
But
why
you know,
we,
proof should not be going one way. I'm being told I need to offer proof. I have proof here.
and to be clear,
And
it appears.
Entergy is basically, you know, they just sit at a computer and type some numbers, and all of a sudden it's guaranteed to be so.
For the
Like I said,
record,
the
it,
Ms. Jones, let
January-
Mr. Farmer, General Counsel, let him speak to this
The-
legal issue here.
the proof that we have before the commission at this point is the meter readings that have been provided by the company and sworn to and testified to by Mr. McGee. Ms. Jones at this point has not offered any proof that those numbers are incorrect, except in the case of the January bill that we've discussed, which it was an admitted estimated read. Other than that, unless there's documentation other than her opinion that the meter readings are incorrect, it's not something the commission can consider.
All right. Mr. Martin?
And I would like to note that I'm not offering documentation because I'm not being provided documentation that I'm asking for.
Okay. Well, we've already discussed that matter.
And I asked a question earlier. If you're not under the state of Mississippi local government records, what are you under for retention?
They're under the rules of the Public Service Commission.
I'm sorry?
They are under the rules of the Public Service Commission with regard to documentation, plus whatever rules, internal rules that Entergy may have in addition to the Public Service Commission rules. Those are the rules they're under.
And do you know what area of the public service rules they're under?
Practice and procedures section, and I don't have that in front of me.
Because I have copies from that too.
Are you now saying that they are not retaining the appropriate records?
I am.
Okay, can you point to us some evidence that that's the case?
And it's also saying on here, under the practice and rules, estimated meter readings may be utilized only for reasons beyond the control of the utility, such as the inclement weather and inaccessibility to the meter, and that was not the case.
Okay, Ms. Jones, if you want to supply us with a statement after this meeting, we'll be glad to consider that as to the evidence that you have that they are not following the practice and procedure rules of the commission with regard to retention of their records. Okay, you have any further cross-examination of their witness?
Are you asking me?
Yes, ma'am.
Um,
You're cross-examining Mr. McGee. Do you have any other questions for Mr. McGee?
hold on one sec. No, not at this time, but, would the PSC have a retention schedule for this area?
For what area you mean, with regard to the records on, that they have to keep under that rule that I pointed you to the rules of practice and procedure. Mr. Farmer, is that the correct area?
To the extent that that exists under commission rules, it would be under the rules of service or the rules of
Rules of
practice and
service.
procedure.
Okay,
Otherwise, it would be Entergy's own document retention policy.
right.
It would be under what again?
The commission has two sets of rules that are generally applicable. One are the rules of practice and procedure, and another separate set of rules are the service rules. And then the third,
But my question is, would your administrative office have a list of the retention schedule for this business?
To the extent it's in our rules, it's it's on our website under rules of practice and procedure.
No, I'm at PSC right now. My question is, would PSC have a copy of the retention? In other words.
We have a retention schedule and they have a retention schedule. We have a copy of our retention schedule on our website. Yes, ma'am. We do.
Just for you, so you don't have a copy of.
I'm not aware of that, copy of their
So
retention.
you're not the auditing agency for this
No,
company?
no, ma'am.
Okay.
the Public Service Commission maintains jurisdiction over investor-owned utilities such as Entergy. However, the retention, their internal records retention policies are their own internal records retention policies. To the extent that I appreciate your testimony, you're alleging that they do not retain records in accordance with that policy. I'm interested to know what, if any, proof you have that that's true.
That they don't retain records?
Because they're,
Well, this paper they just passed out indicates that they don't retain records.
Okay,
Anytime you do an adjustment, you should have documentation
okay,
to
but,
justify the
all right,
adjustment.
Ms. Jones, here's what we'll do. We're happy to hear any evidence you have that they are violating a records retention policy. They are subject to our records retention policy to the extent we have one. They are subject to their own internal records retention policy if they have one. They are subject to the Securities and Exchange Commission internal records retention policy if they have one. They are subject to the Internal Revenue Service records retention policy if they have one. And any other regulatory agency. They've got numerous other regulatory agencies that regulate what they do. To the extent those federal or state agencies have retention policies, they are required to retain those records. I don't know what all those are. We have our own policy. To the extent that we know anything about it, they seem to be following that policy, but I can't tell you that every single document that should be retained is being retained. Mr. Martin, do you know whether or not you are in compliance with various records retention policies that apply to you?
To the best of my knowledge, Energy Mississippi would be in compliance.
Speaking to the
with-
microphone.
Energy Mississippi is in compliance with its retention policies.
Mr. McGee, are you aware of any variance, any violation that you have with regard to records retention policies?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay.
Commissioners, Ms. Jones was in the middle of her cross. If she has any additional cross-examination questions.
Any
that'd be
additional
appropriate.
questions for Mr. McGee? Ms. Jones, we'd be happy to hear those.
Entergy asked for a dismissal, and I would like to hear their logic and what the purpose of the dismissal is, other than their verbal that they didn't overcharge.
Okay, let's get the matter of cross-examination out of the way first, and we'll have closing statements. Mr. Martin, do you have any cross-examination? Either one of you.
I'd like to ask some questions, if I may, Commissioner Brown.
Yes, ma'am.
So, Ms. Jones, want to kind of jump around a little bit, if you don't mind, because I have a couple of follow-up questions based on some of the things that I think I understood you to say.
Are we done with Mr. McGee? I'm sorry. Oh, okay, Ms. McGee, you're excused. Thank you very much. All right, I'm sorry.
One of the examples that you used with respect to the adjusted bill was the fact that for 1 month, because of the 33-day cycle limitation, Entergy subtracted 916 kilowatt hours for that month. Is that correct? Is that what you stated a little bit earlier?
916 kilowatt hours.
Are you disputing that during that month you used 916 kilowatt hours in that first month?
What I am disputing is that the reading
Ma'am, can you answer?
verified.
Yes, ma'am. But what I'm asking is, are you disputing that for that month in which we only billed 33 days rather than the entire 35 days, that you did not use that 916 kilowatt hours that we subtracted for that month? Are you saying that you did not use that?
I'm not disputing anything other than what I have found based on my findings in 2019,
Yes, ma'am.
that I need to see the actual figures
Okay.
that was read at 505 Smith Car Road.
Then you stated a little bit earlier that Entergy Mississippi added the 916 kilowatt hours to the next month. Is that correct?
And that month has no indication of an adjustment or anything on it.
Do you understand that that 916 hours was from the prior month's usage and it was actually billed for your actual usage and not an estimate? Do you understand that?
I assumed it was adjusted based on the fact that you subtracted it 1 month because you backdated the bill. I fully understand that. You backdated the bill 4 days. But when you backdate it, there is no way for you to know how many kilowatt hours I used between January the 4th and January the, 9th? There's no possible way you would know how much I used. Yet, the next month, you adjusted with a plus to the February bill. And basically, all this does is prove to me that you guys are adjusting figures based on basically nothing. And this is why you won't provide the meter reading figures, because the meter reading figures, what was captured at my house, is the most important part of my file. And I'm still trying to figure out how I have an account with any industry who refuses to provide me the records from that industry.
No further questions.
And when the manager came out on the 28th, when I
No further
provided
questions.
my copies to them, as you can see on my copies, I was not told they were coming out. I was not scheduled for an appointment with them. They just showed up.
Okay, Ms.
But I had put a padlock on my box because at this point, that was the other question I have. Do you guys have the ability to move the hands on my meter? Or to advance?
You want to
the
respond?
readings on my
I'll let you respond to that, and then do you have it?
It appeared that you have an electronic meter. Is that
No,
correct?
it's just a regular meter with the number showing on it.
All right, Mr. McGee, do you know whether or not, can you answer her question? Her question was, do you have the ability to change the meter reading without a measurement, to manipulate the meter reading in any way? Okay. Other questions? Nothing else on cross? All right, you got closing statements. Ms. Jones, you want to close in any way?
Well, basically, like I said, I feel that I've presented this PSC and Entergy with enough information to show that their figures are altered and estimated, and my account with Entergy was not supposed to be estimated or whatever. If there was a problem with my bill, then they should have come out and reread the meter from day one. But when I call them, they always say, oh, no, there was no problem with the reading. This is your figure. And the only relief they have is to offer me a payment plan. But unlike the previous years, this time I was ready for them, and this is my proof. Although everybody turns a blind eye and pretends not to see it, it's here. And you can't change it.
Okay, Ms. Jones, I want to be very clear. We're not turning a blind eye to what you're saying. That's the reason we are here today. You filed a complaint. We are not able to do anything for you unless you are able to demonstrate a monetary, an amount of money that you think you've been overcharged. We don't have any authority for anything else. That's, Mr. Farmer, am I correct about that? So far, you have not done that, and we can't help you with the other issues you have with Entergy. We don't have any authority to do that. Mr. Martin, do y'all want to close?
We asked that the commission dismiss this complaint. We believe we've satisfied Mrs. Jones' request for meter data information. We provided that for the period from January 2016 through June of 2019. And we believe those records show that Ms. Jones was billed accurately for her actual usage over that time period. So the commission should dismiss the complaint.
Okay, we've heard opening statements, evidence, closing statements. Ryan, you have anything else? Staff, do you have anything that you need to add?
No, Commissioner.
Okay, with that, we will take this under advisement and we will let you know. Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
May I say one thing before we close? When I did my records for January, technically they had overcharged me 50% for January 2019. And I believe they did basically the same thing for the previous years. So if I had to say a figure, I would say 50% of whatever the January, February bill is.
Okay, anything else from
Or
anybody?
a copy of the records, and like I said, as long as I'm looking at the actual records captured at my house, then I will be satisfied, or I will just let it go.
Okay, their testimony is those are the actual amounts captured at your house. That's what we have
We're
before us.
looking at the figures, and we know they're not.
Okay, anything else from anybody? Thank you very much.